The bridge of the carrier Relentless shook violently as another plasma volley slammed into its weakening shields. Commander Daniel Hayes gripped the tactical console, watching the holographic display flicker with static. Red icons representing enemy vessels outnumbered the blue ones 10-1, and that ratio was getting worse by the minute. "Shield integrity at 19%, Lieutenant Amy Brooks reported, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "We cannot sustain another concentrated barrage." Daniel wiped blood from a cut above his eye and stared at the display. The Valorian armada stretched across the void like a swarm of metallic insects, their crimson hulls gleaming in the light of dying human ships. 3 years of war had brought humanity to this moment, their last stand above Earth itself. "Commander," called Ensign Paul Martinez from the communications station, "Admiral Gibson is requesting all remaining vessels fall back to the lunar defensive line." "Fall back to what?" Daniel muttered. The lunar colonies had been reduced to rubble 2 days ago. There was nowhere left to retreat. He pulled up the fleet status on his personal display, 47 ships remaining from an original force of over 300. The Valorians had brought 2,000. The war had started simply enough. First contact with the Valorian hierarchy had seemed promising. They were an ancient civilization, spanning thousands of star systems, their technology centuries beyond anything humanity had developed. But what humans had mistaken for diplomacy had been assessment. The Valorians did not negotiate with species they considered inferior. They cataloged them, then harvested their worlds for resources. When humanity refused to submit to integration, a polite term for systematic enslavement, the hierarchy had responded with overwhelming force. Colony after colony fell. Mars burned. The orbital habitats around Jupiter were reduced to expanding clouds of debris. And now they had come for Earth, the cradle of human civilization. "Enemy formation shifting," Amy announced. "They are concentrating fire on the Defiance and Starward Hope." Daniel watched helplessly as the 2 cruisers tried to evade, their engines flaring bright against the darkness. It was not enough. Concentrated plasma beams carved through their hulls like hot knives through paper. The Defiance broke apart first, its reactor going critical in a silent flash of white light. The Starward Hope lasted 3 seconds longer before suffering the same fate. 45 ships remaining, Amy said quietly. In the depths of the Relentless, Dr. Catherine Walsh was running. The ship's internal corridors had become a maze of sparking wires and buckled plating, but she knew the path to the artifact chamber by heart. She had walked it every day for the past 6 months, ever since the archaeological team had recovered the object from the ruins on Titan. The chamber doors had been blown open by an internal explosion, but the stasis field around the artifact remained intact, a perfect sphere of absolute stillness containing an object that defied all scientific understanding. It was small, no larger than a human fist, but it was older than the solar system itself. Carbon dating had been meaningless. Spectral analysis had returned impossible results. The best estimates suggested it predated the formation of the Milky Way. Catherine stopped at the edge of the stasis field, breathing hard. Around her, the ship groaned and shuddered with each impact. Through the observation port, she could see Earth hanging blue and beautiful in the void, and the Valorian fleet slowly encircling it like predators around wounded prey. "What are you?" she whispered to the artifact. They had found it buried beneath kilometers of ice and stone, surrounded by the remnants of structures that predated any known civilization. The symbols carved into its surface matched nothing in any human or alien database. But there had been one phrase, repeated over and over in a language that seemed designed to be universally comprehensible, that her team had managed to translate. "In the hour of extinction, call to us." She had thought it was poetry, a philosophical message from a long-dead race. Now, watching humanity's last ships burn in the darkness, she wondered if it might be something more. On the bridge, Daniel was preparing to give the order he had hoped never to speak. The Relentless had 16 nuclear warheads in its arsenal, not enough to turn the tide but enough to make the enemy pay for their victory. "All hands," he said into the ship-wide channel, "prepare for ramming speed. We will not go quietly into the void." "Sir," Paul interrupted, I'm receiving a transmission from Dr. Walsh in the artifact chamber. She says it is urgent. We are in the middle of dying, Ensign. Whatever it is can wait. She says the artifact is activating, Commander. She says it is responding to the attack. Daniel hesitated. The artifact had been studied for months without showing any signs of functionality. Most of the science team had concluded it was simply an elaborate sculpture, but Catherine Walsh had never agreed. She had insisted there was something dormant within it, waiting. Put her through. Catherine's voice filled the bridge, tight with barely contained excitement. Commander, the artifact has begun emitting energy signatures we have never recorded before. The patterns, they are not random. They are structured almost like a signal. I think it is trying to communicate. Communicate with what? I do not know, but the inscription talks about calling out in the hour of extinction. Commander, I think this device was left here for exactly this moment. I think we are supposed to use it. Another impact rocked the ship, and 3 more status lights on Daniel's console went red. Life support was failing in sections 12 through 15. Hull integrity was critical in the forward sections. They had minutes left at best. How? He asked. How do we use it? The inscription mentioned a call. I think someone needs to touch it to make contact directly. And what happens then? I have no idea, but we are about to die anyway, Commander. What do we have to lose? Daniel closed his eyes. He thought of Earth below them, of the 8 billion people waiting to discover their fate. He thought of his daughter, Nicole, who had just turned 7 and still believed her father could protect her from anything. He thought of all the dreams and hopes and potential that would be extinguished if the Valorians won. Do it, he said. Doctor, whatever that thing is, activate it. Call out to whatever is listening. Tell them humanity needs help. In the artifact chamber, Catherine Walsh stepped forward. The stasis field parted around her hand like water, and for a moment she felt the impossible cold of absolute zero against her skin. Then her fingers touched the artifact. The universe shifted. Across the galaxy, in places that existed outside of normal space and time, ancient consciousnesses stirred. They had slept for billions of years, since the universe was young and full of possibility. They had watched the rise and fall of countless civilizations, the birth and death of stars, the slow dance of galaxies across the cosmic void. They had grown tired and withdrawn, content to let the universe proceed without their interference. But they had left seeds behind, small pieces of themselves scattered across the cosmos, waiting for the right moment, waiting for a species worthy of their attention. Now, for the first time in epochs beyond counting, they heard a call, and they answered. On the bridge of the Relentless, every screen suddenly went white, not from enemy fire or system failure, from something else entirely. The light was warm, almost alive, and it seemed to pulse with a rhythm that matched the beating of human hearts. Then a voice spoke. It came from everywhere and nowhere, resonating not through speakers but through the minds of every human in the fleet. We hear you, children of Earth. We have watched your species grow from scattered tribes to star travelers. We have seen your capacity for cruelty and your potential for greatness. We have observed your wars and your kindnesses, your failures and your triumphs. Daniel found himself unable to move, unable to speak. Around him, his crew stood frozen in similar states of awe and terror. Outside, the Valorian fleet had also stopped, their weapons falling silent as the ancient presence made itself known. You call to us in your hour of extinction, as the inscription promised. You seek salvation from those who would destroy you. This is the moment of choice, yours and ours. What choice? Daniel managed to ask, though his lips did not move and no sound left his throat. The choice that defines all species who reach this threshold. You can accept our help and join the greater community of awakened civilizations. You can become something more than you are, inheritors of knowledge and power beyond your current comprehension. Or you can refuse and face your fate alone. Why would anyone refuse? Because our help comes with responsibility. Those who accept must become guardians themselves. They must watch over younger species, protect the vulnerable, maintain the balance that allows the universe to flourish. It is not a gift freely given but a covenant entered into. Many civilizations have found the burden too great. Many have chosen extinction over responsibility. Daniel thought of humanity's history. The wars, the genocides, the environmental devastation, the countless ways his species had failed to live up to its potential. Were humans worthy of such a covenant? Could they be trusted with the power being offered? Then he thought of his daughter's smile, of the volunteers who had rushed to help after every disaster, of the scientists who had devoted their lives to understanding the universe, of the artists who had created beauty in the darkest times, of the ordinary people who performed small acts of kindness every day, expecting nothing in return. "We accept," he said. "Humanity accepts the covenant. We will learn to be worthy of it." "We know," the voice replied. "We chose you because we believe you will. The seed was placed on Titan specifically for your kind, waiting for the moment when you would reach for the stars and face the darkness that dwells between them. You are young and flawed, but you possess something rare in the universe, the capacity to grow beyond your limitations, to become better than you were." The light began to change, shifting from pure white to a spectrum of colors that had no names in any human language. It flowed through the relentless like water, touching every system, every component, every human soul aboard. Daniel felt knowledge flooding into his mind, technologies that humanity had not discovered yet, principles of physics that would take centuries to fully understand, histories of civilizations that had risen and fallen before Earth's sun had even ignited. And he felt power, raw, fundamental power that rewrote the laws of reality at the quantum level. The Relentless was no longer a damaged warship struggling to survive. It was something new, something that existed partially outside of normal space-time, shielded by forces that made Valorian weapons as dangerous as children's toys. Across the human fleet, similar transformations were occurring. Ships that had been moments from destruction were restored and enhanced, their crews given access to capabilities they had never imagined. The remaining 45 vessels were suddenly the most powerful force in the solar system. Admiral Patricia Gibson stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Sovereign, watching through newly enhanced sensors as the transformation swept through her fleet. She had commanded naval vessels for 30 years, had seen everything from pirate skirmishes in the asteroid belt to the first desperate battles against the Valorians. Nothing had prepared her for this. "Admiral," her tactical officer said, voice trembling, "I am reading energy signatures from our vessels that should not be possible. Weapon systems are online that I do not recognize. Navigation shows options for travel that violate everything we know about physics." "I know," Patricia said softly. She could feel the knowledge the ancient powers had given her, sitting at the edges of her consciousness like a vast library waiting to be explored. "It is a gift and a responsibility." "What do we do, Admiral?" Patricia looked at the Valorian fleet, still frozen in space as the ancient presence held them immobile. 2,000 ships, crewed by beings who had conquered countless worlds and exterminated countless species. They had come to Earth expecting an easy victory. They had no idea what they had awakened. "We give them a choice," she said. "The same choice that was given to us." She activated the new communication system, sending a message that would be understood by every being in the enemy fleet. "Attention, Valorian hierarchy. This is Admiral Patricia Gibson of the United Earth Defense Force. The war is over. You will withdraw from our solar system immediately and return to your own territory. You will release all human prisoners and cease all hostile actions against human colonies throughout the galaxy." Response came quickly, carried on frequencies that the Valorians could not block or jam. "This is High Commander Vex of the 3rd Annihilation Fleet. You are in no position to make demands, human. Your species is defeated. Your world will be harvested and your survivors will serve the hierarchy for eternity." Patricia smiled grimly. "Commander Vex, I suggest you look at your tactical displays. Really look at them." Across the Valorian fleet, sensor operators were reporting impossible readings. The human ships, which had been damaged and dying moments before, were now radiating power levels that exceeded anything in the hierarchy's arsenal. More than that, they were surrounded by fields of energy that registered as threats of the highest order, forces that could tear through Valorian shields like tissue paper. "This is not possible," Vex said, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. No primitive species can develop such technology. What have you done? We asked for help, Patricia replied. And help answered. She allowed a fraction of the power now available to her fleet to manifest visibly, a demonstration, not an attack. Space around the human ships rippled and folded, creating cascading waves of distortion that swept toward the Valorian armada. When the waves touched the enemy vessels, their shields flickered and failed, their weapons went offline, their engines sputtered and died. 2,000 ships sat helpless in the void, their mighty armada reduced to a collection of drifting hulks. Could destroy you all, Patricia continued. It would be easy, it would be just. After what you have done to us, to all the species you have conquered and exterminated, no one would blame us for wiping you from existence. She paused, feeling the weight of the covenant she had accepted. But that is not who we choose to be. We are offering you a chance to survive, to change, withdraw from our space, return to your own worlds, learn to coexist with other species instead of enslaving them. And if we refuse, then the next time we meet, we will not be merciful. The Valorian fleet hung motionless for a long moment. Patricia could sense High Commander Vex conferring with his subordinates, assessing options that no longer existed. The hierarchy had built its power on the principle of overwhelming force. When you had more ships and better weapons than your enemies, negotiation was unnecessary. They had no framework for dealing with a species that could simply turn their fleet off like a light switch. Finally, Vex's voice returned to the communication channel. The hierarchy accepts your terms. We will withdraw, but know this, human, we do not forget those who humiliate us. One day we will find a way to overcome whatever power you have gained, and when that day comes, we will return. We will be waiting, Patricia said, and we will be ready, not to destroy you, Commander, but to show you a better way. The universe is vast enough for all of us. Perhaps someday you will understand that. She cut the connection and watched as the Valorian fleet slowly restored itself to minimal functionality, just enough to limp back to their own space. It would take them months to travel the distance, months during which humanity would grow stronger and more capable with the knowledge the ancient powers had given them. On the Relentless, Daniel Hayes sat in his command chair and tried to process everything that had happened. The bridge around him looked the same, but nothing was truly the same anymore. He could see things he had never been able to perceive before, the subtle flows of energy that connected all matter, the quantum fluctuations that underpinned reality, the vast tapestry of space-time stretching out in all directions. Commander, Catherine Walsh's voice came over the internal channel, you need to see this. He made his way to the artifact chamber, moving through corridors that had somehow repaired themselves during the transformation. The artifact still sat in its containment field, but it had changed. What had once been a small, enigmatic object was now pulsing with soft light, its surface covered in symbols that shifted and reformed as he watched. It is still communicating, Catherine said. She stood nearby, her eyes reflecting the artifact's glow. Not with the ancient powers directly. I think they have gone back to their rest, but with us. It is teaching us, Daniel, showing us how to use what we have been given. Teaching us what exactly? Everything. Physics, biology, engineering, mathematics. Knowledge that would have taken us thousands of years to develop on our own. And more than that, it is showing us the history of the Covenant. All the species that came before us, the ones who accepted and the ones who refused. The civilizations that thrived because they embraced their responsibilities, and the ones that destroyed themselves because they could not handle the power. Daniel stepped closer to the artifact, feeling its warmth wash over him. Images flashed through his mind, worlds of impossible beauty, beings of incredible diversity, conflicts and cooperation spanning millions of years. He saw the rise and fall of empires, the birth of new species and the extinction of old ones. He saw the ancient powers themselves, entities so vast and so different from humanity that his mind could barely comprehend them. And he saw the purpose behind it all. The Covenant was not just about protection or power, it was about growth, about helping the universe itself evolve towards something greater. Each species that joined the Covenant added their unique perspective, their particular gifts, their individual contributions to a grand project that had been ongoing since the beginning of time. We have a lot of work to do, he said quietly. Yes, Catherine agreed. But we are not alone. We never were, really. We just did not know it until now. The months that followed were unlike anything in human history. News of the transformation spread across Earth and the surviving colonies like wildfire. At first, there was fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of change, fear of what humanity might become. Religious leaders debated whether the ancient powers were gods or demons. Scientists struggled to reconcile the new knowledge with everything they had believed before. Politicians argued about who should control the new technologies and how they should be used. But gradually, understanding began to replace fear. The ancient powers had not simply given humanity tools, they had given humanity a vision, a purpose. For the first time in history, the species had a clear direction, a meaningful role in the universe beyond mere survival. Commander Daniel Hayes became one of the leading voices of this new era. His experience on the Relentless, his direct contact with the ancient presence, had given him insights that others lacked. He traveled the world speaking to crowds and councils, explaining what the Covenant meant and what it demanded. "We have been given a second chance," he would say. "Not because we deserved it, but because something in us, something in our nature, convinced the ancient powers that we could become worthy of it. Now we have to prove them right." The changes came faster than anyone expected. New energy sources eliminated scarcity and ended conflicts over resources. Medical technologies advanced centuries in months, curing diseases that had plagued humanity since the beginning. Space travel transformed from a dangerous endeavor to something as routine as a transatlantic flight. Within a year, new colonies were being established on worlds throughout the solar system and beyond. But the most profound changes were not technological, they were social. The knowledge the ancient powers had shared included not just science but wisdom. Lessons learned by countless civilizations about cooperation, sustainability, justice, and the responsibilities that came with power. Humanity absorbed these lessons slowly, arguing and debating and sometimes fighting over their implications, but always moving forward. 5 years after the awakening, the first true test of the Covenant arrived. Lieutenant Commander Nicole Hayes stood on the bridge of the horizon, one of the new generation of ships built with the knowledge humanity had received. She had followed her father into the service, driven by a desire to understand and protect the gift that had been given to her species. At 23, she was young for her rank, but the new era demanded new approaches. "Contact," her sensor operator reported. "Unknown vessel, approximately 3 light-years distant. Configuration does not match any known species in our database." Nicole studied the readouts. The vessel was small, barely larger than a shuttle, tumbling through space without power or propulsion. Its design was crude by human standards, chemical rockets and primitive fusion reactors, the kind of technology humanity had used a century ago. Life signs, faint but present, multiple beings aboard, species unknown. They appear to be in some form of hibernation. Nicole made her decision instantly. Helm, intercept course. Medical teams to the shuttle bay. Activated the ship-wide channel. "All hands prepare for first contact protocols. We have encountered what appears to be a pre-Covenant species in distress." Her executive officer, Commander Marcus Webb, moved to stand beside her. "Lieutenant Commander, regulations suggest we observe from a distance and report to command before making contact." "Those regulations were written before we received the Covenant, Commander. Our responsibilities have changed." She turned to face him directly. "Out there is a species taking their first steps into the universe, and they are dying. What do you think the ancient powers would want us to do?" Marcus considered for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I think they would want us to help. Then that is what we are going to do." The rescue was delicate work. The alien vessel's systems were failing, its atmosphere venting slowly into space. Nicole led the boarding team personally, using her abilities to stabilize the hull while her crew cut through the outer airlock. Inside, they found 12 beings in crude stasis pods, 4-limbed creatures with scaled skin and large, luminous eyes, their bodies designed for a world very different from Earth. As the medical teams worked to revive them, Nicole studied their vessel. It was a generational ship, she realized, designed to carry its passengers across the vast distances between stars at sublight speeds. These beings had committed themselves to a journey that would have taken centuries, knowing they might never reach their destination. They were brave, Marcus said quietly, standing beside her, to launch themselves into the unknown like this with no guarantee of success. They were desperate, Nicole corrected. She had found the ship's logs, had used her new abilities to translate them. Their homeworld was dying. Something in their star was changing, making their planet uninhabitable. This ship was one of many they launched, scattered in different directions, hoping that at least one would find a new home. Did any of the others survive? Nicole reached out with senses that no human had possessed 5 years ago, searching through the vast darkness of interstellar space. She found debris fields, frozen corpses, the wreckage of hopes that had not survived the journey. But she also found signals, faint, distant, but unmistakable. Some of them, she said, scattered across hundreds of light years. I am detecting at least 8 more vessels with life signs. She turned to Marcus, her eyes bright with purpose. Contact command. Tell them we have a rescue operation to coordinate. The first of the aliens awakened 3 days later in the Horizon's medical bay. His name, translated roughly, was Swift Current over Stone, and he was the expedition leader, the being who had been responsible for deciding which of his people would have a chance at survival and which would remain behind to die with their world. Nicole was there when he opened his eyes, sitting beside his bed in a form that he might find less frightening. She had learned to adjust her appearance slightly, to communicate without words when necessary, to bridge the gaps between species that had never encountered each other before. "Where am I?" Swift Current over Stone asked, his voice rough from centuries of disuse. "You are safe," Nicole replied. "You are on a ship belonging to a species called humanity. We found your vessel drifting in space and brought you aboard. My people, the others on the ship, all alive, all recovering." Nicole paused, considering how much to reveal. "We have also detected other vessels from your fleet, 8 more ships with survivors. We are coordinating rescue efforts now." Swift Current over Stone closed his eyes, and Nicole saw moisture gathering at their corners. "We did not dare to hope. The distance was so great, the chances so small. We accepted that we might all die in the void." "You almost did," Nicole said gently, "but you did not, and now you have a choice. Your species can establish a new home, build a new civilization among the stars. We will help you if you wish. We will teach you what we know, share the gifts that were shared with us." "Why?" The alien's large eyes studied her with an intensity that suggested he was searching for hidden motives. "We have nothing to offer you. We are primitive compared to your people." "What do you gain from helping us?" Nicole smiled. "We gain the opportunity to keep a promise, to be worthy of a gift that was given to us when we were in exactly your position, desperate, dying, facing extinction. Someone helped us when we needed it most. Now we have the chance to do the same for you." She reached out and took his hand, feeling the alien warmth of his scaled skin. "The universe is not the cold, uncaring place it seems. There are ancient powers that watch over it, that care about the species struggling to find their way among the stars. They cannot intervene directly, not without cost, not without changing the fundamental nature of what they protect. But they leave seeds behind, possibilities. And sometimes when a species proves itself worthy, those seeds bloom. 5 years ago, humanity was where you are now. We were facing an enemy we could not defeat, watching our species march toward extinction. We called out for help and help answered. Now we are part of something larger, something that gives meaning to our existence beyond mere survival. And our first responsibility, the first test of our worthiness, is to extend the same hand that was extended to us." Swift Current over Stone was silent for a long moment. Then slowly, he squeezed her hand. "In the old stories of my people, there are tales of beings who travel between the stars, who watch over younger races and guide them toward wisdom. We thought they were myths, dreams born from hope rather than reality. Perhaps they were memories," Nicole suggested. "Perhaps long ago, someone helped your ancestors just as we are helping you now. The universe has been here for a very long time. There have been many cycles, many civilizations, many seeds planted and grown. Maybe your people were once like us, recipients of a gift that they then passed on to others. And now the circle continues. Yes, now the circle continues. On Earth, Daniel Hayes watched the news reports of his daughter's mission with a mixture of pride and wonder. The little girl who had once believed her father could protect her from anything had grown into a woman who could protect entire species from extinction. She had taken the gift that humanity had received and used it exactly as it was meant to be used. He stood on the balcony of his apartment, looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, Nicole was changing the course of history for a species that had never known humans existed. Somewhere out there, the Valorians were rebuilding, perhaps reconsidering their philosophy of conquest. Somewhere out there, other species were taking their first steps into the void, not knowing that they were not alone. And somewhere in places beyond human comprehension, the ancient powers slept, dreaming whatever dreams such beings dreamed, waiting for the next call, the next species worthy of their attention. "Thank you," Daniel whispered to the stars, "for believing in us, for giving us a chance to become something better." The wind carried his words away into the night, and for a moment, just a moment, he felt as though something vast and ancient stirred in response. A warmth that had nothing to do with the temperature, a sense of approval that went beyond words. Then it was gone, and he was alone again under the infinite sky. But he did not feel lonely. He felt connected to his daughter, to his species, to the great web of life and consciousness that stretched across the universe and back to the beginning of time. The war had almost been lost. Humanity had stood at the edge of extinction, facing an enemy that could not be defeated by ordinary means. They had called out into the darkness, hoping against hope that something would hear, and the ancient powers had answered. They had chosen humanity, not because humans were perfect, not because they had earned it, but because they had the potential to become something worthy of the gift they received. Now, 5 years later, that potential was beginning to be realized. A species that had once warred among itself was learning to cooperate. A civilization that had once exploited its world was learning to be its guardian. A people who had once feared the unknown were learning to embrace it. There would be challenges ahead. The Valorians would return someday, perhaps with new weapons or new allies. Other threats would emerge from the depths of space. The Covenant itself would test humanity in ways they could not yet imagine. But they would face those challenges together. And they would face them not as the frightened, desperate species that had called out for help 5 years ago, but as the guardians they were meant to become. The war was over. The real work had just begun. And somewhere in the cosmos, the ancient powers smiled in their sleep, content in the knowledge that they had chosen well. Humanity would stumble, they would make mistakes. They would sometimes fail to live up to the ideals they had accepted, but they would keep trying, keep growing, keep becoming more than they had been. That was all the ancient powers had ever asked. That was all they had ever hoped for. And it was enough. The end.